First of all, I'd like to say that I'm really happy that I'm here and having the chance to talk for the first time after stepping out of administration, which makes my life much easier when talking to you. So I'm gonna draw just the risks and what has been happening for quite some time. I'm gonna be pretty transparent on what I've seen since May 2021, which is the day that we started the first caretaker government, the first time in in 2021 in Bulgaria. So practically, the risks are coming from, at least from my perspective, for from what we are doing ourselves. Now, I want to draw a clear line between a war conflict and an economy energy crisis, because actually, Europe makes a lot in helping Ukraine when we're talking about the actual war, while it also makes a lot to destroy its own economy through the energy. And it's been absolutely irrational what has been happening over the last decade in terms of actual energy mix and dependencies. And let me give you some data, and then I'll step back to what I've said just now, because what the market is showing right now, by the way, I have a 10 plus years experience in equity trading and so on and so forth. So practically a market that has switched from being commodity utility to financial dash technology dash transformation is pretty clear that it's already a financial tool. It has never been as financial as it gets by today. So CO2 emission prices. CO2 are critical for electricity production, especially in Europe, whereas we do have a lot of coal, but European Commission has decided that coal is ugly and so on and so forth, even though it would have been able to be the tool to cap the prices on the upside, rather than thinking how to cap them from Russia. Now, CO2 emission prices have fallen down from 99 euro to 65 euros, 35% decline in 20 days. Now, natural gas futures from 340 euro per megawatt hour to 210, 38% decline in 12 days. Crude oil from $123 to $85, 31% in 3 months, less than 3 months. And my favorite, electricity futures, December 2022, from 885 euros to 640 euros per megawatt hour, 28% decline in 4 days. In 4 days. Now, back in the days, everybody was claiming that it's a zero-sum game. So can you imagine a consumption falling down 28% in 4 days? No. So is it already a utility commodity market? No, it's not. It's a financial market in a transformation era. So we need to think about it as a market that needs to be supported as a financial market, rather than and making it stable, rather than thinking about it as what it used to be back in the days. So if it was a zero-sum game, everybody would have been happy, because we have a producer and we have a consumer, and that's it, end of game. Transit costs, and we're done. But from these financial tools, there are entities, institutions that are making tons of money. And by tons of money, I mean tons of money. You cannot imagine. So such a sharp decline over 4 days, practically we have not seen in anything else, even in a recession mode from equity, which means that actually the utility, first of all, utility era is over. But how is that possible? The only way that it can happen is that it has been over-leveraged. By over-leveraged, I mean European Commission has granted access to heavy financial institutions, really heavy. Now, that made the situation for the industry and for the end consumer, which is also both corporate, industrial, and residential, quite unpredictable, which again creates political turmoil, crisis, new elections, and so on and so forth, which again creates no predictability at all. And we have created it ourselves. It's just Ukraine over the last 6 months has been just an excuse. It is just an excuse. Now, how did the leverage happen over the last 2 years? I'm sure that most of the people in the audience are familiar with the ETS mechanism. Why we have created it in a zero-sum game. I am building an entity that produces electricity, somebody else is consuming it, but in between ETS, you are allowing somebody to trade CO2 emissions. Fine. If you're a producer, okay. If you're a consumer, okay. If you're saving, then I need to take yours, and okay. But on top, we have decided to let financial institutions that pumped up the prices 5 times, and in Europe, you do have a direct correlation between prices and CO2 emissions, because 1 megawatt hour equals 1 ton of emission. So if you lift up the CO2 emissions 5 times, this means that you're lifting up electricity prices 5 times. And we are talking about how come did it become so expensive? It's nowhere in the world that expensive rather than in Europe. Now, and when I say that energy crisis in Europe is the fault of EU itself over the last decade, I will give you just 3 really short examples. Actions, the ETS mechanism itself, directly impacting. Further, with this, EU has decided to practically to kill coal, which again proved rather irrational. And on top, we have said that nuclear is unstable, so we have to fight it, we have to stop it, which means that you're further deteriorating the supply side, which means prices are going up on the lower quantities. So it's a myth in Europe that we're lacking electricity. We're lacking stable and predictable electricity because green and decarbonization is perfect, but it needs to happen in a sustainable manner. You cannot just substitute green immediately with 24/7 band energy. That does not work like this. We cannot predict neither wind, water, or sun. And when we do need electricity, it's practically all the time. We need to have it from somewhere. Lack of actions. We talked about issues. Poland and Bulgaria were the first countries who had to suffer the behavior of Gazprom export. Yeah. And actually, we have had the confidence that European Commission will be strong in its position. It has not been. So practically this resulted in rather not being so united, but creating additional problems. And of course, the last thing that I love, ignorance. We have been 200 days in war, and we still don't have infrastructure map, global continent infrastructure map with its bottlenecks, with seasonality profiles, with balancing, anything. If you want to go united, if you want to have synergies, then we need to go together, really together. We cannot stand alone. Now, each and every country has its own policy, keeping its own track and having its own map. And then we are pretending that everything is fine. So as long as the policymakers are betting on their survival for a mandate that it's in the range of year and a half, whereas the energy sector's projects are with maturity over 10 years, we will keep on suffering. And unfortunately, the price that we're going to pay that winter and next winter, the single thing that we can bet on for Europe being in survival mode, really survival, is to have a heavy recession, so to decrease the demand. I'm sorry to be a little bit grumpy, but good news is though that actually the recession is in place, so the prices will keep on going down and there will be kind of quasi-stability going forward.